Christopher Priest returns to the Man of Steel with a brand new 10-issue miniseries that has a pretty cool concept. What if Superman got lost in space and lost 20 years of his life before returning to Earth? As first issues go, Priest set up the premise really well, slowly building tension throughout the book through a really cool flashback depicting how Superman got blasted across the universe, and it also contains some pretty neat Justice League action. What I really enjoyed about the issue though was Clark and Lois's banter, since it had a bit more of an intelligent lean to it than what we're used to, and it fit the characters, both who were seasoned, well-read, well-educated reporters, really well. So well, I'd love to see that become the actual norm of these characters, with them actively discussing philosophy and poetry, and also having a bit of fun with it and making jokes about it and all that sort of stuff. It also makes the turn of Clark coming back home after experiencing 20 years in about 5 minutes that much more horrific, as it's almost like the old Clark we knew at the start of the issue is gone completely by the end, and there's a more solemn and reserved version of him now. Carlo Pagulayan reteams with his Deathstroke writer, creating some really great artwork that starts off pretty light and bright, but when the twist for the story becomes known near the end, there's a great shift to a more foreboding colour scheme, with darker shadows and dimmer colours. We also get a brief tease of Carlo's alien designs for the final page, and it's great. It's nothing that looks really familiar or your usual DC Comics sort of alien stuff, which is all just, they all look very humanoid and have some sort of familiar shape to them. Instead, he seems to be approaching it through a veil of sort of cosmic horror, which is more than welcome in my book. I love my cosmic horror, and I love getting it involved in Superman. Superman Lost issue 1 was a really cool beginning to Priest's new miniseries, laying out the plot well and giving us an interesting taste of a side of Lois and Clark we seldom see. I'm going to give this issue a 10 out of 10. Superman Lost issue 1 finds a car frantically evading the police through a hillside. Lois Lane meanwhile writes an article positing that most people never really think about the day their life will end. She explains the day will start out like any other, but then something will happen, and something will change everything and stop you from coming home. A woman travelling the opposite way to the speeding car is ran off the road, breaking through the side barrier and off a cliff, but her car never leaves the cliff as Superman grabs it. The sudden stop causes the boot of her car to open and hundreds of $100 bills come flying out, showering the area in green. Later, Lois writes a story about the woman, revealing how she was a Senate aide who had nearly $1 million of cash in her car. She wonders if the woman is tied to the senator scandal she's also covering, as she goes to see Clark, who is fiddling with a toaster, trying to get it to work. Lois tells him the girl told the police that she didn't know the money was in the car, and the senator quitting means his opposition gains the upper hand in the Senate, meaning none of this actually makes any sense to her. Clark thinks that the simplest explanation is usually the correct one, but Lois reminds him that as reporters, they are paid to be cynics. Clark reminds her that he was brought up on a farm and he believes in good old optimism, as Lois tells him to just buy a new toaster and stop fiddling with it, but Clark reminds her they can't, since they don't have a car full of money, let alone a car. Clark agrees to put the toaster down if Lois agrees to stop her research for the night. The couple decide that they have at least 10 minutes free, but Lois can't understand why the senator quoted the philosopher he did when he stepped down. Soon Clark's communicator goes off and he tells his wife he'll be back soon, heading out to his other job as Lois slowly falls asleep. Sometime later, Lois awakens to Clark standing in the living room in costume. She thinks it was quick of him, asking if he's hungry. Clark doesn't say anything, making Lois worried. She asks if he really is back and if the mission seemed quick. Clark finally says something, telling his wife it wasn't quick and he's been gone for 20 years. The doorbell rings and Lois answers it to find Bruce Wayne. Bruce is visibly shocked to see Clark standing there in the living room, and Lois notices, demanding to know what Bruce did. Lois tells him that he seems surprised to see her husband is alive and well and there, and it must be quite serious to rattle even Bruce Wayne's poker face. Bruce tries to leave, but Lois refuses to let him go until she knows what is going on. Clark says that Bruce can leave since Lois is angry with him, not Bruce. Lois knows that the call Clark got wasn't just some emergency, learning that it was a J-20. Clark reveals that a Chinese fighter was shot down over the China Sea, but Lois figures it wasn't the China Sea, it was international waters. Clark says that the plane actually went down in Subic Bay and it was shot down by the US, who had confronted the Chinese army when they snuck into sovereign waters to rescue a Chinese salvage submarine that had sank off the Luzon Islands. To quell the possible beginning of World War III, the Justice League were called in to intervene, arriving with their own submarine to perform a rescue. Aquaman heads down to find the Chinese salvage team that went into the wreck the sub was investigating, as Superman pulls the rescue vehicle deeper down. Superman asks if the crew are armed, but Batman isn't worried about that. Green Arrow thinks they should be, since he and Batman are the ones they'll be shooting at when they rescue them. Flash tells the team that things on the surface are getting choppy, but he's giving off enough static electricity to scramble the ship's navigations and targeting. Batman wants a few more minutes bought as Green Lantern begins moving the ships back into the neutral waters. Hal finds he's having some trouble with the jets, being that they are so fragile, especially when grabbing them with tractor beams. Wonder Woman uses her invisible jet to disrupt their airstreams, allowing Hal to grab them, and with a little help from Martian Manhunter's use of telepathy, the pilots are suggested to comply with the heroes. With everything sorted above the surface, Batman gets ready to rescue the sub below, having Wonder Woman join the team underwater. The team head through the murky water towards the sub as Lois guesses that there was no submarine. Clark tells her that they don't know what it was, but it was not of this world, as the League come across a strange orb that the salvage team were investigating. Flash tries to get in contact with the team, but Batman tells him that they are just docking. Suddenly, Manhunter unleashes a telepathic burst onto Oliver and Bruce, warning them not to board the orb. He quickly apologizes, since he's detecting bursts of Hawking radiation in the orb. Green Lantern scans it and finds that Manhunter is right, and it's an alien ship with a singularity in it. Aquaman warns that if there is a singularity inside the orb, it will tear any human apart, like what it must have done with the Chinese salvage crew. Flash tells them that if the singularity is in the orb, it means it's probably powering some type of faster than light drive, and a breach in it is all kinds of bad, since it will create a wormhole which will rip the planet apart. Oliver points out how the salvage sub is sinking, and he realizes the team was trying to steal the hyperdrive of the ship, and in doing so, they somehow destabilized it and were pulled into it, and now it is pulling everything around it into it. Superman knows that Earth is in danger from it as Green Lantern volunteers to collapse the singularity from within, but Batman tells him that his power ring is the only fallback they have if the singularity falls. Superman is the only one who can go in, telling Manhunter, who volunteers as well, to stay behind and haul the orb out if it doesn't work. Wonder Woman wraps her lasso of truth around Superman to anchor him, telling him that it's unbreakable. Manhunter tells Superman that his species' biogravitic resonance will cause him to become part of the core activation, and in doing so he'll be able to go inside and find the failsafe, but he must be aware of the event horizon and not cross it. Lois thinks that Bruce sent her husband in, and Clark reminds her that it's not Batman's fault, since he did what had to be done to save the planet. The League anchor the lasso together as Superman speeds into the singularity. He tells the team there isn't much of the ship left, and the aliens who owned it are long gone, as his comm signal begins to fade as the collapsing of the singularity begins to accelerate. Green Lantern isn't too worried though, since he can see that it's only limited to the ship, as Batman orders Superman to be pulled out, as he realizes that Superman is in the event horizon. Superman refuses to leave since his body is completing the circuit, and if they pull him out, it will cascade the singularity and destroy everything. The Flash tells the team that the singularity is causing a whirlpool on the surface, and suddenly the team are spat out of the ocean. Batman finds that Wonder Woman's lasso untied itself from Superman, as Bruce tells Lois that Aquaman and Manhunter are still down at the bottom of the ocean searching for Superman, as Green Lantern is alerting his core in order to get a network across space, and Wonder Woman and the Flash are circling the globe, all looking for Superman. Clark again tells his wife that she has every right to be angry with him, and Lois wants to hear all about this 20 years that Clark experienced, as in the recent past, Superman finds himself spat out of the ship on the far reaches of an unknown universe.